Order. Senator Di Natale.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister or the Treasurer. Now, you say you've listened to the Australian community. You say after the last budget was roundly rejected that you've listened to the Australian community. But
on my right.
But you continue on with your budget that continues the attacks on hospitals, on education. You continue to gut the foreign aid budget. You ignore action on climate change, and then you take money away now from nurses. You take money away from aged care workers by cutting FBT entitlements. I speak to a lot of people. None of the people that I speak to want those things. Can you tell me who you're listening to?
The Minister for Finance. Order on my right. Order. Just a moment, Minister. On my right. Order. The Minister for Finance representing the Treasurer, Senator Cormann.
Thank you very much, Mr President. May I congratulate Senator Di Natale on his elevation to the leadership of the Greens, and indeed may I congratulate the Green senators in this chamber that they have listened to my strong advice to pursue regime change in the Greens. I'm very pleased that there has been regime change in the Greens, and I hope that the Greens leader, the new Greens leader, will listen to his Green constituency when it comes to a very important budget measure from last year, which is to ensure that we maintain the real value of the excise on fuel. Because, of course, given that there is an expectation that we maintain the real value.
Senator Di Natale, a point of order.
Point of order on relevance. Well, I know this question time's become a bit of a joke in this place, but I asked who he was listening to in reference to some very direct budget measures, and he's brought in an issue that's got nothing to do with the question. Can you please direct his attention to the question?
Thank you, Senator Di Natale. Order on my right. Senator Di Natale, you had a very, very long preamble to your question, mentioning a number of facts, and then you quickly asked at the end, can you say who you were listening to? I did hear the minister say he was actually listening to the Greens at one point, and the minister has 1 minute and 21 seconds left in which to continue his answer.
Thank you very much, Mr President. I'm quite happy to tell Senator Di Natale who we've listened to. We have listened to the men and women of Australia representing the Liberal and National parties here in the Australian Parliament, who are representing their communities, strongly and effectively. We've listened to many stakeholders inside and outside the Parliament in relation to all of the issues that we are addressing in this budget. And what I would say to Senator Di Natale in his inaugural week, in his inaugural parliamentary week as the leader of the Greens, I hope that Senator Di Natale will take a more pragmatic and a more outcomes-focused approach when it comes to engaging with the government, because there are some things that we actually could do together in the national interest. There are some things that we can do together to put Australia on a stronger foundation for the future. And there happen to be some outstanding matters from last year's budget where I believe there should be a common understanding about the best way forward. So I'm looking forward to working with Senator Di Natale in his new role in making the best possible decisions in the national interest for our great country. And we won't always agree, but I encourage you strongly to take a constructive approach.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Di Natale.
Thank you, and I should let the minister know I don't smoke cigars, but I'm more than happy to have a conversation with him. Given that the Australian community don't want money to be stripped out of health care, they don't want one family pitted against another family.
Just a moment, Senator Di Natale. Just a moment. On my right. Order, both sides. Particularly on my right. Thank you, Senator Di Natale.
Opportunity to reset the clock.
Yes, you can start again, Senator Di Natale.
Given that the minister has said that he listens to his National Party and Liberal Party colleagues rather than the broader Australian community, who don't want money to be stripped out of healthcare, who don't want to pit one family against another to pay for childcare, can I ask the minister, why won't you take on the big end of town and make sure that everybody pays their fair share when it comes to raising revenue?
On my right. Order. Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I certainly agree with Senator Di Natale that we have to do everything we can to ensure that every business that generates profits in Australia pays its fair share of taxes in Australia, consistent with the laws of the land. And the Treasurer has tabled legislation in the House of Representatives yesterday to ensure where multinational companies enter into contrived arrangements to avoid tax here in Australia, that the Tax Commissioner has the necessary powers to see through those contrived arrangements and ensure that the appropriate level of tax is paid here in Australia. Now, having said that, I mean, beyond that, of course, in any budget, you've got to make judgments about what is the national interest. You've got to make judgments in the context of a whole series of competing priorities, a lot of meritorious causes that would like to see more money. You've got to make judgments about what is affordable. And we believe that in this budget we've taken a fair, measured and responsible approach, taking into consideration the particular challenges we're facing as a country right now.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering the question has expired. Final supplementary, Senator Di Natale.
Thank you, Minister. I'm pleased you raised the issue of multinational tax avoidance, and it was good to see it in the budget. However, when I looked through the budget papers, I noticed there wasn't 1 cent allocated next to that line item, not 1 cent. Is that because you've gutted the ATO, that there are so few staff in that organisation that they simply don't have the capacity to be able to enforce that measure?
Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. There's so much wrong with the premise of that question, I don't know where to start. Firstly, the staffing reductions in the ATO were actually initiated and banked by none other than Senator Wong as the Finance Minister. So that is an important first point to make. The second point to make is that the Tax Commissioner actually clearly spelled out in Senate estimates that this is not impacting on the operational effectiveness of the ATO in any way, shape or form, that they were able to make the necessary efficiencies in order to give effect to their staff reductions. And finally, of course, the reason we haven't allocated any money to it is because, unlike the previous government, which allocated $12 billion in revenue against the mining tax, spent it all before they raised the ZAC, then didn't raise any money and exposed the budget to structural difficulties, we are taking the Keating approach. When Paul Keating introduced the petroleum resource rent tax, he estimated $0 in revenue in his first budget and then raised money. Well, we want to get the money we need in order to ensure these businesses pay their fair share of tax, but we're not going to get ahead of ourselves. We're going to do the work first.
Thank you, Minister.